The chairman of the House Select Benghazi Committee asks Hillary Clinton to relinquish her private email server and hints at consequences if she does not. This is Special Report. Good evening and welcome to Washington. I'm Brett Baer. The message to Hillary Clinton from House Republicans tonight: we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Clinton is right now being asked to turn over her now infamous, once secret email server. If she does not, lawmakers could go the subpoena route. Here's Chief White House correspondent Ed Henry.
Hillary Clinton was given a deadline of April 3rd, right around the time she plans to announce a presidential exploratory committee to respond to a demand she provide her personal email server to either the State Department's Inspector General, another independent arbiter, or Republican Trey Gowdy is willing to take the showdown to court.
But a retired judge or an archivist or an Inspector General, then she'll be forced to do so. Otherwise, the House as an institution may be forced to go to court to try to get access to that.
Gowdy, chairman of the House's Special Committee on Benghazi, also gave Clinton more time, March 27th, to deal with a previously issued subpoena for all possible documents related to Libya. The latest request was sent in a letter to Clinton's lawyer in the matter, David Kendall, which is telling in and of itself. Kendall, who did not return a call from Fox, is a familiar face since he was the criminal defense attorney who represented then-President Bill Clinton during the impeachment drama. A sure sign the former Secretary of State is not only gearing up for a presidential run, but girding for major legal showdowns as well, after her recent news conference where she pushed back on suggestions she turn over the server and denied that she had deleted any official emails.
We did not. In fact, my direction to conduct the thorough investigation was to err on the side of providing anything that could be possibly viewed as work-related.
Clinton admitted, though, to deleting over 31,000 emails. So Gowdy wrote to Kendall he needs the server, quote, for a thorough investigation into what happened before, during, and after the attacks in Benghazi, Libya. More broadly, the equities in these emails extend beyond this committee. The House of Representatives and the American people are entitled to a complete accounting of the Secretary's official record during her time as Secretary of State. In the letter to Kendall, Gowdy tried to fend off Democratic charges he's on a fishing expedition by saying he wants a third party to review the server so that truly personal email is not seen by lawmakers.
I don't care about her yoga practice. I don't care about bridesmaids' dresses.
Now, in New Hampshire tonight, likely Republican presidential hopeful Rand Paul is expected to call for Clinton to turn over all money that she had received, the Clinton Foundation received from Saudi Arabia. A Paul advisor says he'll declare this is an example of a war on women as the Clinton Foundation gets more scrutiny. Brett?
Ed Henry live on the North Lawn. Ed, thank you. ISIS terrorists are once again tonight claiming responsibility for the vicious massacre of innocent people. Just 2 days after killing 21 in Tunisia, terrorists slaughtered at least 137 in twin suicide bombings in Yemeni mosques. It provides another choke point for an Obama administration foreign policy increasingly under attack both abroad and here at home. We have Fox team coverage tonight. Jennifer Griffin's at the Pentagon with extremely critical comments for the president, how he's dealt with Iraq from the man credited with turning the tide for the coalition effort there. Kevin Corke at the White House, where the administration is juggling bruised feelings with Israel and softer rhetoric toward Iran. But we begin with Chief Washington correspondent James Rosen here in the Bureau with a day of terrorist carnage in a country President Obama had hailed as a model of success for the administration's counterterrorism policy. James.
Brett, good evening. Yemeni diplomats tell Fox News they believe these claims of responsibility that have been issued for these horrific bombings by ISIS, even as the White House, at least for now, is reserving judgment. Survivors spoke of lakes of blood after 2 suicide bombers struck a Shiite-controlled mosque in Yemen's capital Sana'a, and a second pair struck a second Shiite mosque across town in coordinated blasts targeting worshippers at Friday prayers.
They used the chaos and the vacuum to enter the mosque in the middle of prayer and blow us up a second time.
At least 137 people were killed, close to 400 injured, scores of children among the victims. A group identifying itself as the Yemeni branch of ISIS claimed credit online, and Yemeni officials took that seriously, chiefly because the terrorist group usually active in this theater, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, or AQAP, formally denied responsibility for the attack, and typically takes pains, these officials officials said, to prevent civilian casualties.
There is not at this point clear evidence of a operational link between these extremists in Yemen and ISIL fighters in Iraq and Syria. A similar thing could be said about the claims of ISIL's role in the attack in Tunisia earlier this week.
Yemen has been racked by internal strife since the onset of the Arab Spring, but the fighting grew acute in recent months when Iranian-backed Shiite rebels the Houthis seized control of Sana'a and deposed President Abdel Rabbo Mansour Hadi, whom Washington still insists is Yemen's legitimate leader.
A civil war would be a terrible development for Yemen, but that's why we believe it's essential for all the parties and groups to avoid unilateral actions, to avoid violence.
With AQAP reportedly seizing a southern provincial capital, however, and executing Hadi loyalists on the spot, civil war appears a very real prospect.
And the problem in the country is that the rise of terrorism in concert with the government, which fell very quickly, is that you've now got this sort of perfect storm of nightmare conditions.
Yemeni officials told me today's bombings were the worst mass casualty attack in the country's modern history, and that the only foreign governments still maintaining a presence in Sana'a, Brett, are a handful of Arab allies, the Russians, the Chinese, and, you guessed it, the Iranians.
Okay, James, thank you. The already strained relationship between President Obama and Benjamin Netanyahu is feeling new pressure tonight over an apparent change of rhetoric by the Israeli leader. This occurs as the president tries to close a nuclear deal with Iran. Correspondent Kevin Cork has the story from the White House.
A day later, the White House is not backing down. The administration continues to reject the notion that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is in fact interested in a two-state solution for Israelis and Palestinians, despite a campaign statement to the contrary.
The point is that even the divergent comments of the Prime Minister legitimately call into question his commitment to this policy principle.
It was during the heat of the Israeli campaign that Netanyahu said there'd never be a Palestinian state while he was in office. But after his victory, he walked back those comments in an interview with Fox News' Megyn Kelly, recalling remarks he'd made in 2009 saying a peaceful Palestine would be a dream worth pursuing, but one he says is not feasible right now.
I didn't retract any of the things that I said in my speech 6 years ago, calling for a solution in which a demilitarized Palestinian state recognizes a Jewish state.
But White House sources say President Obama expressed deep concerns about the Prime Minister's remarks during a phone call congratulating Netanyahu on his re-election. A snapshot of a widening personal gulf between the two leaders, and one that could soon be the tipping point of a dramatic shift in U.S. policy toward Israel.
For decades, our nations have been separated by mistrust and fear. Now it is early spring.
After the president criticized 47 Republican senators for their letter to Iranian leaders, warning that a nuclear deal could be revoked by a future president, Mr. Obama used his annual Persian New Year's greeting for his own appeal to the Iranian people, asking them to support an agreement.
My message to you, the people of Iran, is that together we have to speak up for the future we seek.
Meanwhile, Secretary of State John Kerry and the U.S.-led group hit a major roadblock in the talks with Iran today. The regime called for an immediate end to sanctions if a deal is struck, something the Obama administration won't agree to without first verifying that Iran's nuclear energy program is peaceful and includes strict international oversight. And it's not just the Iranians. The White House actually faces plenty of hurdles right here at home, with Republican Senator Lindsey Graham threatening to cut off funding to the UN if not consulted on the arms deal. Brett?
Kevin Cork in the White House briefing room. Kevin, thank you. Now to Iraq, from the man who played a major role in securing it for the U.S.-led coalition. Despite his legal troubles, retired general and former CIA chief David Petraeus is still consulting the Obama administration on Iraq and the region. Tonight, national security correspondent Jennifer Griffin with the Petraeus perspective.
In a scathing assessment of how the war against ISIS has been fought, even neglected, General David Petraeus says ISIS is not the biggest problem for the U.S. in Iraq. Quote, I would argue that the foremost threat to Iraq's long-term stability and the broader regional equilibrium is not the Islamic State. Rather, it is Shiite militias, many backed by and some guided by Iran. Adding the current Iranian regime is, quote, not our ally in the Middle East. It is ultimately part of the problem, not the solution. In fact, Iran began filling the vacuum when the U.S. refused Iraq's request for military help to fight ISIS in January 2014.
Airplanes arriving every single day, Qasem Soleimani on the ground, Quds Force coming in, providing advisors, assistance. The Iranians want control of Iraq just like they're controlling Syria, Lebanon, and Sinai.
Petraeus described how he and Iran's shadowy top commander, General Qasem Soleimani, who's now leading Iraq's push into Tikrit, exchanged barbs when Petraeus was commander of U.S. forces in Iraq. Last week, Petraeus was back in Iraq, meeting Iraqi leaders at a forum in Kurdistan. The White House confirmed it has sought advice from the former U.S. commander and ex-director of the CIA.
He is legitimately regarded as an expert when it comes to the security situation in Iraq. It makes a lot of sense for senior administration officials to, on occasion, consult him for advice.
Petraeus didn't pull his punches, blaming the rise of ISIS in part on Washington as well as former Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki. Quote, it is tragic foremost because it didn't have to turn out this way. There was certainly a sense in Washington that Iraq should be put in our rearview mirror, that whatever happened here was somewhat peripheral to our national security, and that we could afford to redirect our attention to more important challenges. Petraeus, who as CIA director pushed to arm the Syrian opposition in 2011, described Syria as a geopolitical Chernobyl, spewing radioactive extremist ideology through the region.
He warned the U.S. won't be successful creating a Syrian opposition while Assad is still able to bomb them, which he can under the current U.S. and coalition strategy. Brett.
Jennifer Griffin live at the Pentagon. Jennifer, thank you. Witnesses in eastern Nigeria report Boko Haram terrorists killed 11 people who had recently returned to their homes following the ouster of the insurgents last month. They say other residents of the area have crossed back into the relative safety of Cameroon. Boko Haram fighters were pushed out of the eastern Nigeria region in February. For all the latest on all of the foreign policy and intelligence challenges, tune in this weekend when CIA Director John Brennan joins Chris Wallace on Fox News Sunday. Check local listings for time and channel. Next, stocks surge on the weaker dollar. We'll talk live with Liz Clayman of the Fox Business Network. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. WDRB in Louisville, where Prince Charles and wife Camilla are wrapping up their U.S. visit. The royals made several stops at charitable and cultural sites, including historic Churchill Downs in Louisville. Fox 31 in Denver with Colorado's new distracted driving campaign. Flashing signs along highways urge drivers to, quote, get your head out of your apps. And this is a live look at Honolulu from our affiliate KHON. Looks warm there. Big story there tonight. Speculation President Obama may be spending time at the house that Magnum made famous. A longtime friend of the president confirms he has purchased the estate that was home to the Magnum PI TV show for 8 seasons back in the 1980s. And that's tonight's live look outside the Beltway from Special Report. We'll be right back.